I was just going to say, some of you will know me. I know many of the names. I'm the former PNG country manager for the Pacific Women Shaping Pacific Development program in PNG, and it was my great honour as that role to be able to meet many really courageous human rights defenders in particular who are working daily to prevent.
Oh, don't mute her.
Not me, please. Meeting many. Am I muted still? No.
Okay.
Meet many human rights defenders who are working courageously to prevent violence, gender-based and sorcery accusation-related violence in their communities. I think I can see that we've got our sergeants online. Is that you then, under the name of Simon Mokot? Sergeant Nilly and Sergeant Larry? If it's you, wave.
Can you find Mokot there, please? I'm trying to find them on the screen.
Yes, I think that that's them. They've unmuted.
Better find Mokot.
Sergeant Nilly and Sergeant Larry, if you can hear me, can you just wave on your screen so that we can see that you can hear?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can hear you clearly, loud and clear.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gibbs. Guess what, team? We are on time. According to my computer, it is 10:19. A conference organised by Zoom is currently running to time. Well done, everybody. Yes. So while we were just waiting for connections, I've introduced myself and thanked the organisers.
Thank you.
So this panel is really about policing sorcery accusation-related violence and protecting citizens from violence, preventing and punishing crime are core components of a government's responsibility to its citizens. But we all are aware that this is not easy. And in Papua New Guinea, not probably in particular, but in Papua New Guinea especially, it's not easy. And there are common challenges to policing that impact the protection and punishment of crimes, all sorts of crimes. And then you have the particular components and implications and nuances in relation to sorcery accusations. So we're really lucky to have on the line, I can see you all still, Sergeants Nilly and Larry, currently, and I think Professor Gibbs said Mount Hagen, to share with us their experiences on the challenges of policing sorcery accusation related violence, but also how they're overcoming those challenges. So I'm going to ask Sergeant Nilly, if you can start. I've just lost you, so I can't see you anymore. And after we get their perspective, we're also going to ask William, I'm going to mispronounce your name. I apologise in advance. William Kapongi, have I got that right? Close? He's not nodding.
Correct.
William is with the National Research Institute, and William's also going to provide some observations of police training he's participated in or observed. So, if I may, can I again? I've lost Sergeants Larry and Nilly. Are they still on the line? If you are on the line, Sergeants, can I ask Sergeant Nilly to start and to tell us about your experience?
More thought. There, that one. Yeah. Sergeant Nilly, please, will you take the microphone, please?
They look to be unmuted, but I can't hear anything. Can anyone else hear anything?
No.
Perhaps while we're resolving that situation, William, are you able to share with us your observations as part of the research team about police training and the challenges and how you see them overcoming them?
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. As you mentioned, my name is William Kipongi, and I am based here in NRI. And actually, I graduated in 2019. And after my graduation, Professor Gibbs and Professor Miranda has invited me to work with the Sorcery project. So that's why I am here looking after the project and then involved in assisting with the research programs here at NRI. So actually, I attended one police training with the Department of Justice and then CIMC. So from that training, I realized that police are also going through some difficulties. With regard to SARV, they find it a little bit hard to intervene when the community agreed to settle the issue outside of the courts. Sometimes police already get into arresting perpetrators or locking them up, but then the communities went ahead and then tried to release those victims. So even that is supported by our data from the research that out of the 1,039 cases, only 92% cumulative percentage of those cases went to court. I mean, have no complaint launched to the police stations. So just imagine only 22% have been launched complaints at the police station. So behind as to ask why there is no complaint launched at the police stations. And when we also analyze the data also tells us that there were almost about 92% of the cases where charges had been laid to the perpetrators. So there was no charges had been. So it seems that there is very minimal police involvement in SARV cases in the 4 provinces that we had engaged our research. So to make it short, when in the trainings, Goroka, there's a good number of police from the family sexual violence who attended the training. And they seem to identify that one of the very overarching issue is that community are not supportive when they try to intervene. And also, they don't have proper facilities to arrest perpetrators and then follow up with the cases. And also they claim that they lack manpower when sorcery accusation related cases are very tense and high in the remote places. So I think there's a lot of challenges here, and it seems there is a problem in between the police as well as the community itself. So it seems they have to come together in a middle ground where how they can both community can come up, police can get in, and then to address the issue in a more holistic way.
Thanks very much, William. That issue of policing by consent and the issues of what you do when you don't have community consent for making an arrest or following up is going to be, I'm sure, something that the sergeants will discuss as well. Just before I ask a follow-up question, William, Gibbs, Professor Gibbs, do we have the sergeants back online?
Yeah, they're still waiting to come online, yes.
Fantastic. I can see the photos now. I hope that they got to hear some of William's discussion, but in brief, sergeants, it'd be great if you could give us a brief introduction to yourself and your experience, and then share with us your challenges, and then we can compare your challenges as police officers with some of the observations and feedback from William through the training. Over to you in Mount Hagen.
Simon Moffat, please bring it up and unmute them.
Simon, I think all you need to do is unmute and then talk, because we could hear you earlier. So at the very bottom of your computer screen on the left, there should be a little sign with a microphone that says mute. If there's a red dot through it, red line through it, then we can't hear you. But if you unmute that, then we'll be able to hear you. If you press on that microphone so that it's no longer red with a line through it, you can start talking and we can hear all about and learn about your experiences.
And Father Gibbs, maybe can we just make sure there's no one in the waiting room?
Yeah. Can you admit all? Yeah, we're admitting all. And can you just get Simon and unmute him, please?
And we thought travel in BNG had its challenges, hey?
That's right. Simon Mockott is showing with no mic, unfortunately. Is there some way we can connect him by phone? I'll call the policeman. If I can get him by phone, we can put his phone beside the microphone. He's currently busy.
Trying to call you, I'm sure. William, while we're trying to get contact again, you mentioned that there's very limited numbers through the research, which I think was conducted, the data and the research you're referring to was conducted in which provinces again, please?
Actually, the starting dates in each of the provinces are a little bit different. They started with National Capital District, here Port Moresby, and then Bougainville, Juaka, and Enga. 2 provinces in the islands and 2 in the Nikoni Islands here.
And in those 4 site locations, Enga, Bougainville, Juaka, and Port Moresby, you mentioned that there are very few, just over 20%, I think you said, 22% complaints that reach the police station. And did I remember that correctly?
Yes.
And that's of over 1,000 incidences that you recorded.
Exactly, 1,039.
1,039. I did write it down, but 22% actual complaints is probably still not a bad rate. When we get the sergeants, it'll be interesting to hear how many other complaints are actually. Oh, we've got them back online. William, can we come back?
Yes, yes, you can come back later.
Sergeant Nilly, can I get you to talk? Because we can see you and you don't have a microphone on.
Yeah, I'm waiting for a speaker here. You can't hear me, I think.
No, I can hear you.
Can you hear?
I can hear you. Chair.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah, so Rachel, are you able to hear me now? Okay. So what, this is my turn to talk?
Yes, Sergeant Nilly.
Oh, Sergeant Nilly, not me. Okay.
Whoever has the microphone is allowed to speak first.
Yeah.
Hold on. Yes, now it's
Sergeant Larry, if you've got the microphone, we're very keen to hear of your experiences. So please share.
on. I've got, hello, is that you, Evan?
Sergeants, whoever.
Okay, are you able to hear me now?
We can hear. Speak. Sergeants, we can hear some background noise, so I think your microphone is working, but what we can't hear is your thoughts.
Okay. I am Sergeant Larry. I am Sergeant Peter Larry from Karawaki, Cebu. I'm the team leader to a group of
You better to get it on the phone.
I think we may have just lost him again. Miranda, do you know if that was Sergeant Nilly or Sergeant Larry who was describing himself as the team leader, and was that of a district peace group?
I'm
Sounded
not
like
sure
Larry.
who was speaking.
Oh, Fiona, do you know?
Michelle, I think it was Peter Larry.
And he's the team leader of a
Karawagi.
police, Karawagi. Is it called a district peace and mediation committee, Fiona?
I didn't hear.
But it's a group that includes policemen,
Yes,
ward councillors, community leaders from other.
Which microphone can we put this on? This or this?
I was just thinking, Fiona, that while we're trying to get the sergeants on the line, you could help explain the roles of those different committees that Sergeant Larry was about to describe himself as a team leader of.
So I think from my understanding of what happens in Karawagi, they're a response unit, and Sergeant Peter Larry works closely with the human rights defenders, Mary Kinney, and them to respond to SARV cases. So when we kicked off the sorcery research in 2017 in Simbu, in Mengendi, we talked to Sergeant Larry about the work that they do. So it's really like what you were saying, connecting up all the dots. So the police, the community, the human rights defenders.
Thanks, Fiona. That sort of brings you back.
So the Karawagi-based response unit.
Thanks. That kind of brings me back to William's point about the difficulties of policing, where you have a small number of police and a potentially much larger numbers of members of community. It's a numbers game in some respects, and the difficulties when you might not have the support of those members of the community to the actions that the police want to take. And that's, I guess, one of the values of bolstering police support with human rights defenders and other community leaders who can come in and bolster that support and provide more action and not make it about the state but about the community. Is that supported by the research and the experience, William or Miranda? or for that matter, Father Gibbs and Fiona.
Yeah. Rochelle, I've got Eben is nearly on the phone here now. I could put him on speaker. Could we try that?
Yes, please.
Yes. Ebenezer, are you there now? Ebenezer. Would you please speak now, and I'll put you on the speaker. We'll see if we can hear you. Tell your story now.
Yeah. Am I on there?
Yes.
We can hear you. Please speak.
Okay. I'll continue. Oh. If you can. Is it Sergeant Peter or me, Ebenezer Nelly?
You start, Ebenezer, you have the microphone.
Can we just continue without just talk?
Father Gibbs, we can't hear the sergeants, but can I just say that in the chat box, we're getting lots of information from lots of people who clearly work with Sergeant Larry, from human rights defenders Jawaka and Kariagi. I'm not sure we'll get to hear his perspective of the challenges, but we're getting lots of feedback in the chats about the work that he does and the work that he does with human rights defenders.
Rachel, can I just continue? If you can we continue? If you can hear us.
We can hear you in Mount Hagen. Please continue. I feel a little bit like radio silence. We need to give it time, but radio silence on Zoom feels a little bit like radio silence on a radio. I feel the need to fill it. Perhaps I could ask Lily from Voice for Change, who has written in the chat box about how she has worked, or Voice for Change has worked with Sergeant Larry. Lily, if it's possible, can you? I know you're not a police officer, but working with police who are trying to respond to sorcery accusation-related violence, can you share what you observe about the challenges and how those challenges are being overcome? You're on mute, Lily.
Good morning from Voice for Change in Jiwaka. It's good to see you people on face again. I think we have some experiences of working with the police. I think Peter Larry is one of those exceptional policemen. He has been really working with us on the SARV cases, but not only on that one, but he has also been working on other cases as well. So I think he has been in the front line helping with supporting the Cook Women for Peace, as well as I think with Voice for Change and the other Highlands Women Human Rights Defenders, we've been working on some very serious cases, trying to integrate back, the survivor back to the community, and this he has been working with us. I also learned from the experiences that some of these policemen and some of these people that women human rights defenders who are so passionate about supporting these sort of people they've experienced. I think Peter Larry, Sergeant Peter Larry was one of them who had an experience of one of his relatives being accused of sorcery. I think his mom, and he hasn't, I think, completely, I think because of that, he gives all his time and effort into supporting the SARV cases. And yeah, we always feel good to have him around. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily.
Yeah, the thing is, we are seeing for a few minutes or so,
our internet connection is not
so we're probably having we are all connected. We've been like when I started talking, it went off and then it comes on and then it goes off. So probably
it's always coming on when you're talking about it not coming on.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, we are using telecom modem. It's data connection.
Sergeant,
it's a
I think
router. Using a laptop, but it's a wireless connection. Actually, we don't have the alien connections here.
Okay, thank you.
Father Gibbs, if I may, if we can give them a little bit more time to try and get the LAN connection. We've got a few other people on the line that I can see who also work with police and who might want to be able to discuss this question of policing by consent and the difficulties.
Yes, Rochelle, I think it's the Hagen is not working well. It was good to hear from Lily, hear from Jiwaka. I'm sure there's some others that we have experience. I'm just looking at the Sister Lorena, whether you have anything to comment to make about the police interaction and the police intervention from the Mendi perspective. Can you unmute yourself?
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, I just would like to share with you that we have lots of victims here in Mendi, and of course we work with the police and with the sexual violence office there in Mendi. We have been rather successful for the last couple of months with one, the protection order, the family protection order. The women who have gone through that process with the police and get the paper in their pilum, they will not go anywhere without their protection order. And the people have respected them now, and even they have become our awareness people and share with the police together that we can do something about the problem to protect our women who have been tortured and have been gone through a lot of suffering. And with that protection order right now, we are successful. What we would like to do in Mendi to support lots of people who I think the same way, we have to get a hold of putting the glass man, the stone man, and the bamboo men into jail. As long as they make great business, especially in far located areas, we will still have a lot of suffering going on.
Thank you for that. I see there's another question coming from Stephanie from Human Rights Watch. Stephanie, would you like to speak and tell us what your question is? Sorry, Rochelle, if I could just, you can see it there in the chat. It seems like Stephanie's just is not on.
Stephanie, you're on mute. I can see your lips moving. Still on mute. On? Okay, now talk. No, still can't hear you. It happens that way. We do have Simon showing up on the screen while Stephanie's fixing her audio. I might read your question, Stephanie. You asked 2 questions in the chat box that I could see, and that was asking Sister Lorena whether or not the majority of victims in Mendi are women.
Yes, Richelle, the majority among 120 women I have right now, I have only 7 men.
And that's a similar sort of connection as I think the research was showing, not connection rate of women accused versus men accused as in Enga and Jawaka, William. Is that correct?
Yes.
So far more women accused. Miranda, you want to jump in?
Just in Enga, yes, but in Jawaka, it's about 50-50 because often it seems that if one spouse is accused, then the other is also accused.
And I think I read from your research that in Jawaka, and Lily, you can jump in here too, in Jawaka, it's very much family accusations.
Yes, we have more family and extended family. They are affected. Yeah, if one of the members is affected, then it'll affect the other family members as well.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that gets sometimes overlooked is that the research that William, Father Gibbs, Fiona and Miranda have been involved in collecting indicates it's kind of the reverse in Bougainville. Miranda, do you want to jump in?
That's correct. So in Bougainville, it's mostly men who are accused. So there's these real gendered patterns that we see, and we're still working through some hypotheses for those. So maybe we can have a discussion about that later, or if anybody's got any thoughts about it, we'd really like to hear that as well.
To bring that question of who's being accused back to the issue that this panel is discussing about policing, I wonder if that plays out. And Sister Lorena has pointed out the availability of family protection orders and happily the usefulness in protecting people accused of sorcery through the issuing of family protection orders. We've got Judy on the line, and I'm sure she'll be speaking later, but research of family protection orders in, Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 6 or 7 different provinces indicate the vast majority of people taking them out are women. And so maybe it's also an issue of needing to make the availability of family protection orders more well known and their availability to be used in the cases of accusations of sorcery to be better implemented. I think I saw that Apollosi Bose from the Justice Services for Stability program was on the line. I wonder, Apollosi, if you could share what training and engagement through the JSS4D with policing and the issues of sorcery accusation related violence, if there are any. Unless you've gone for a coffee, Apollosi, you're on mute. May have gone for a coffee. Stephanie, your earlier question was the question about consent. And I started to discuss that as a result of Williams discussing some of the challenges of when community don't approve or don't support the criminal justice approach. And then the facilities challenges William mentioned for the police in terms of where do you lock someone up for their protection, but also for the protection of those being accused. William or Miranda or Fiona, would you like to comment on the question of consent?
So maybe one thing I could say is that coming through from the research really clearly is the fact that for any effective intervention, there really does need to be a network between those who are working, community leaders, community activists on the ground, and the police, and then sometimes also village court magistrates and faith-based leaders as well. And it seems that that coordinated approach, which I know that the Voice for Change have been really good at working on, particularly when it comes to reintegration, because that's one of the big problems. You know, what do you do after one of these incidents? And there is a continuing sense of insecurity by the victim survivors. And so if there can be support from the police, often with you know, a notice from the village courts, for example, a prevention order, community leaders, family members, then that can give some of that sense of security that is very much needed for victim survivors. I also wanted to, it's not exactly relevant to that point, but people often think that there are no prosecutions for SARV, but in fact, what we've found is that there are on average 12 people who are convicted of really serious offences, of murder, of willful murder each year as a result of SARV, and they're sentenced to really long periods of imprisonment, and in more recent cases, the death penalty or hard labour has been given as well. So I think that it's important that we in this panel identify some of the challenges that the police face, but also recognise that in some respects, there are people being convicted. This is still a there is impunity, but there are also people who are being caught and imprisoned, and probably there needs to be a lot more public awareness as well about those cases, because there is a consistent trend of increasing prosecutions over the last 2 decades since we've been studying this.
That's really interesting. And that point about the needing faith-based community leaders, village court leaders, that brings in, and of course the human rights defenders. Your point is very much that it's not just in responding to accusations and protecting those accused of violence or getting them out of violent circumstances. It's also about then being able to reintegrate them into the community. So along the spectrum of responses to accusations that relate in physical and property damage. Fiona, did you want to contribute any points there?
Is she talking?
Fiona, you're just on mute.
Yeah. So no, I think wanted to add on to what Miranda said about the prosecutions, but also share from the research that one of the things that we've found from the research is that sometimes it's not often justice that the survivors want. Meaning, and I mean it in the way that, what is most important for them is that they live back in their communities peacefully and that the accusation stops. And so, with the policing, coming back to the panel, these are all of the things that is quite challenging for police in terms of policing sorcery accusation related violence, because they can turn up there and want to make arrests and go through the criminal justice process. But when they have a hostile community and when there are no witnesses, or people are scared to come forward because we don't have witness protection, these are all the kinds of real issues that police face. And when I was involved in this research at my time with the National Research Institute, I had interviewed quite a number of police from Goroka, from Simbu, from Hagen, from Enga, and all of these things, and even here in Port Moresby, I would say that that was the key challenge for them, apart from the resourcing in terms of police manpower and things like having no fuel, is that it's really difficult to get people to come forward as witnesses. And the process is really, the wheels of justice turns very slowly in this country. And like what Miranda said, even though there was 12, there have been cases where people have been incarcerated. It's a long process. And as you know, when we're working with people who are survivors in rural areas, it's quite a task for them to keep going and coming back to court.
Yeah, that issue of the time that it takes to prosecute, but also more broadly, I think the question of, is that what the survivors or those accused want? Do they want those accusing them and perpetrating violence against them to be locked away, or do they just want fundamentally to be accepted and safe? And is that outcome that they would like to be accepted and safe going to happen if they prosecute perpetrators? If the perpetrators are implicitly or explicitly supported by others in the community, it's a tough one. Anton, you're nodding there, and I know you have huge amounts of experience. Would you like to add a comment?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Nice to be here. The thing that keeps showing up in my mind is that we have this thin blue line of the police protecting us from the criminal elements in the community. And the police, granted, are under huge constraints of funding and leadership and just their base education level and their attitudes. And we could go on. And we have, all of us who are doing this work, we have so many personal examples of ways that the police have let us down or have failed to do their job. But we still rely on them, and we still have to be their friend. We still have to find ways to work with them. And so I'm wondering right now, like, how do we help these upgrade their own internal standards and their own internal training and their own resourcing and all the things they know they need, but they're frustrated too because their hierarchy doesn't give them what they need to do their job. And so how can we become their allies in a better way so that they can do their job better? How do we incentivize their better behavior, I guess? Yeah, and how does that look like? I've had people who are, have had fingers amputated and they get locked up in bare cement cells for days at a time for their protection, right? Which is good. Like, I'm glad you're protecting them, but we can do better, and we have to find ways to work together to do better.
Yeah. And I guess
so it's a huge challenge, but it comes back to this network, like Miranda was talking about. Like, we have to all be together on the same team, working together for an outcome. We can't be blaming them when things go badly. Like, we're all in a very tough position here.
I think your expression thin blue line is very apt in PNG. I can't right now remember the figures, but when I was last involved in any real sense with the law and justice sector in Papua New Guinea, from memory, there was about 40,000 police, maybe 50,000 police for a population of 7 million people. There were more security guards in Port Moresby than there were total number of police. That was my takeaway. That was 5 years ago. I don't think there's been a massive recruitment round, and the police were aging, as were the health workers. So I'm sure that problem continues. Father Gibbs wants to add in here.
Yeah, Rochelle, I think that's true. And unfortunately, Sergeant Ebenezer Nilly is probably not going to have his say this morning. but I know Anton knows him better than I do, but he's, in my conversations with him, I've heard some pretty amazing stories of his intervention. There's a time there at Terramunda where he went in to rescue 3 women, and the people cut down trees behind him, and they were there armed, telling him that he couldn't take those women out, and he was facing armed resistance, and he was facing a situation where people were cutting down trees to block the police cars so they couldn't get out, and he was able to, after many hours, talk his way out of there along with the women, and he brought the women out. And it's that sort of thing that it's pretty amazing. It's very brave on the part of someone like Sergeant Neely. There's another time where he went in but was not able to rescue someone, and unfortunately that was the time Anton Lutz was able to go. As a non-policeman, somehow Anton was able to go, and that was where he was able to help rescue the daughter of that woman who was killed in Nanhagen. Yeah. So there have been a number of occasions. There was another time at Pina where Sergeant Neely went in there and really read the riot act out to the community and said that, if you people are going to not hand over the person who is responsible for this, and we're going to come in and we're really show force. And eventually the people did hand over the person to him. So it's really a very difficult job for the few who are really committed, to that sort of thing. And I know Ebenezer Neely is, and I'm sure also that
Lee and many other commentators on the chat box have reiterated that Sergeant Lowry has demonstrated that same level of passion and commitment and courage.
As Anton says, it's a thin blue line. There's not many of them who are really prepared to put themselves out like that, but they really need a lot of support, I think, those who are prepared to do that. Yeah.
Given that unfortunately we don't seem to be able to hear from the sergeants themselves, and I had a very quick flick through the program, I don't think this issue that I would like to pursue a little bit more about Sister Lorena's experience with the protection orders. I don't think there's another panel that would give us the opportunity to discuss that. But even if there is, maybe Sister Lorena or Lily, who I think family protection orders have also been used for. It's not often I hear of them being used in cases of accusations of sorcery. Can you share a little bit more about how they've been used in Mendi and Jawaka, if that's the case? Sister Lorena? Or Lily?
Here in Mendi, we go very often when we have 3 or 4 women in one area. We go out with the sexual violence officer, and we really go with the full uniformed police car, and we also have the weapons with us because it's so dangerous. And then we talk to the family, to the immediate family. We talk to the entire community. We make sure that all the different churches are there present. We do a lot of preparation before we go out. And in connection with them, then we ask them to come as the next step with 150 kina to do the preparation work and the printing and the interviews and everything, to make sure that the community, the police, and everybody who is involved is working together. And only that way we are successful.
And Lily, does that accord with your experience in Jawaka?
Yes, what I do agree with Sister Lorena. I think the last one that we did was we were trying to integrate back about the 20 families, and we have been going to the rural area with all the police and everybody, and we had this case conference to make the community leaders be really aware of all this, and then we got a legal team right into the community to they issue the interim protection orders. And we asked them to come to court, and I personally didn't think that they will make it. But on Tuesday, 17th of perpetrators from the mountain of Gembong, they turned up at Min's Village Court, district court. But unfortunately, the presiding magistrate who was taking this case was not around. So now we are trying to work at how best we can get these people to come to court, and the charges will be, not the charges, the protection order conditions will be read to them. And I feel that, if we use the law with the police and with the community, I think we may be able to see some positive changes.
That issue of the respect for the family protection orders is one that sometimes surprises me, but it does seem to be coming out in the research that the vast majority of family protection orders or interim protection orders are complied with. Is that your experience, Lily?
With women, I think six of the cases someone saw, the interim protection, that order that we issued, the women didn't come back, and we don't really know. They were more or less, they were threatened. Yeah, they were threatened. But with the one from the Gembok, and now we are in the process of doing the same for the other SARV cases. That we see this changes. We also saw the importance of having a legal person on site too, to be able to. There's a lot of work involved in getting everybody issuing court order and things like that. So that the advantage of having a legal person on site was able to help us. And now we are in the process of now assisting and trying to work more on this one, trying to work with the leaders and with the perpetrators, with the not with the survivors, to get more protection order out with, and then together with the police and the leaders, and maybe we can see if there's any changes happening in the near future. Yeah.
So it seems to me that protection orders potentially offer an intervention or another tool in the intervention toolbox, both in terms of a response, but also very importantly in terms of educating community and family members and others around in relation to reintegration. That issue of legal literacy and the importance of the law and the messaging around violence is against the law, and this response to accusations of sorcery is against the law, is coming out in some of the research. Father Gibbs, maybe not quite as auspicious a beginning to your conference as we hoped, because we weren't able to get the sergeants online, but I hope that there has been a bit of a discussion of issues relating to policing and the challenges, but also I think importantly some really positive things about Miranda's just told me I do have extra 10 minutes, so I will ask some more questions. I think we are talking about some really more optimistic points in relation to the value and the importance of that network of police plus others in terms of response, the courage that is under display and being displayed by police and others in terms of response, but also this idea of the potential of the protection orders to act as a bit of more of a tool in response to the the sorcery accusation related violence. Miranda's got a hand up.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, Rochelle, that we're actually being joined by Carolyn Gent, who's done a lot of work in Africa, and also by Nimala Nan, who's going to be the next speaker. But I was wondering if we could ask them if they've also could contribute some experiences of how police have worked with communities from the areas where they've done their research.
Please, Caroline.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. It's something I was going to raise later on, but it's fine to do it right now. We work extensively in sub-Saharan Africa, in nations which have a real issue with child witch accusations. Our work is specifically about accusations against children, although a lot of the approaches work regardless of who the victims are. And one of the most successful things that has happened almost organically is that in the Goma area of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, we have a partner there who does a lot of training it's a faith-based tool that we've created called the Heart of the Matter, which looks at root causes. It's based on research, and we identified root causes of accusations in that area. The training is very systematic. It's mainly among church leaders, but it works with community leaders, it works with school leaders, it works with lots of different groups. We've had government agencies that have got involved with coming along to trainings and things like that. It's all biblically based, and that works as an authoritative standard in that context. And one of the things that's happened in Goma is that the local police, who generally speaking either take no notice of violence against children or even actively collude with it quite frequently, because they also believe that the children can be witches and therefore whatever happens to them is okay. But what's happened is that as the systematic training in different districts around Goma has happened, the police have got more and more interested in what's going on. And so what's happened is that the team there have formed what they call synergies, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's these networks which have our partner, LVLE, they're called, it doesn't really matter, but our partner organization, together with churches that they have trained, together with schools that they have trained and others that they have trained, the local police and the local municipal authorities have all come together, and they have created what they call these synergies. There are 2 in the Goma area at the moment, but that's growing. And what they're doing is they're creating memorandums of understanding with positive action that they're choosing to take to basically to enforce child protection. That's the umbrella it's coming under in that context, particularly in what they call the prayer rooms around Goma, which are not really prayer rooms at all. They're so-called prayer rooms where people are making a commercial living out of deliverance ceremonies, which often involve children. And so what's happening is that the police noticed what was going on, want to be trained as well in the same material, which contains information about how to create a child protection process and a child protection policy, but also how to deal with people who are coming to them accusing a child of being a witch. So it's got positive suggestions about how to respond in that situation, and that is having an effect in that context.
Caroline, can I just ask, you mentioned research on the root causes, and I think I'm right in saying that the Sorcery National Action Plan, really, the Papua New Guinea one, really takes an approach of not focusing on breaking the nexus between accusation and violence, rather than necessarily trying to convince people not to believe in sorcery.
Yeah.
Although
and
I think
that's very similar. What you need to do is, well, what we have found we needed to do in these sub-Saharan African context was to look at root causes such as failure to understand child development and the impact of trauma on children, because those behaviors that get exhibited are then used to justify an accusation of witchcraft. So teaching on child development, normal child development, and the impact of trauma is important. Teaching on personal responsibility and not scapegoating people, not looking for someone to blame if something goes wrong. That's what I mean by root causes. So you look at what's really going on here, and if people start to look at what the real problem is, as opposed to deciding to attribute it to witchcraft, then that works as a method of changing thinking around this. Because our primary aim is to prevent rather than to
respond.
Address.
Yeah, I am fascinated now by this, and really want to go down and ask Izzy, if he's still on the line, and William about the police training, because that's kind of doing what you're describing, Caroline, working with the police in relation to not shifting their attitudes towards sorcery. And in Papua New Guinea, most people that I've ever met believe in sorcery of some description, but trying to help them work through the legal issues, understanding their responsibility, and being more sensitive to other perspectives. Izzy, if you're on the line, we've got 2 minutes if you're able to share with us the police training in this respect, or maybe if you're not still on the line, because I can't see you, but there's 3 screens. William, if you would like in 2 minutes to tell us about what content is in the police training manuals. Izzy, your chance first. Going, is he there? I'm calling on Izzy from the Family and Sexual Violence Action Committee, but I can't see him now. William, are you able to share with us from your observation the content and the response of the police training?
Thank you. Actually, that police training part was taken care of by the Justice Department with the CIMC, and I was also just there to facilitate on the part of SARV. So from observing the training, it's sad to see that most of our police were on the ground, a little bit lack of knowledge on the charges that they have to apply in regard to the sorcery accusation related cases. And that's why when the perpetrator is kept too long in the police station, they have to take it out.
Another challenge, getting the evidence to be able to continue the prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
Father Gibbs, Professor Gibbs, sorry. I'm very conscious, because I promised everyone I would stick to time, and you got us off to such a great start, that it is now time to move on to the next panel, to the international speaker, Dr. Nair. So if I may, thank everyone who I called upon at no notice to contribute. Thank you very much for your contribution. I'm very sorry we didn't get to speak or hear directly from the 2 sergeants, but it's great that we have heard a little bit from Professor Gibbs about Sergeant Nilly's experience. And in the chat box, Verena Thomas from the Queensland University of Technology has shared a link on the yumisunupstrong.org website to a digital story sharing Sergeant Peter Lari's experience. So can I encourage everyone to look on the chat box for those resources, and thank you all very much for participating in the policing panel that got to talk about a lot of things.
Thank you very much, Rochelle, and stay with us. There's a lot more of interest coming up.